You are listening to CFRO Community Radio Station. The upcoming show, Conscious Living Radio, is a program that explores frontiers of consciousness, spirituality, personal growth, emerging paradigms in psychology, health, science, and innovative philosophies that reflect commitment to the advancement of individual, social, and global transformation.
Good evening, you're listening to Conscious Living Radio on Co-op Radio Station 100.5 FM. My name is Andrew Resmer.
And I'm Tasha Sims.
One more time, Tasha.
Did you have me blocked out there?
Just for fun.
Just for fun?
Yes.
Yeah, for fun.
Of course. What else?
Well, welcome to Conscious Living Radio. We've got an interesting show for you tonight. Our first guest, Andrew Feldmar, is a psychologist who's worked as a psychotherapist in private practice here in Vancouver for over 44 years. He was introduced to research with and the therapeutic use of psychedelics in 1967, and his interest in entheogen-assisted therapy has never wavered. He's been trained, supervised in LSD therapy by R.D. Laing in London, England, studied at the anthropology of shamanism with Francis Huxley, and also worked with Stan Grof at the Esalen Institute in California. He was also recently involved in a research study sponsored by MAPS to show the efficacy of MDMA as an adjunct to psychotherapy with severe cases of post-traumatic stress disorder. We're going to talk about that a little bit too, I hope. And he'll be coming to town as, I know, part of the conference, the upcoming conference. He's having a pre-conference event at Eternal Abundance Wednesday, October 15th, 8 to 10 p.m. And if you have a conference ticket, and the date of the conference is October 24th, 25th, 26th, the Spirit Plant Conference at UBC. If you've got a ticket for that event, then you're free. You should come to this one too. And if not, $11 online or $15 at the door if there's space, because it probably will get packed. So, Andrew, welcome to the show. Hello, can you hear us?
No, I can.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello, Andrew. Stephen here also.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah,
Hi. Okay, we're going to jump right in because I know we only have you for half an hour. I read that R.D. Laing told you that you can only love that which you know, and you can only know that which you love. And I'm wondering if entheogens help us love, and if so, how? Did you like that question?
Well, sure. The quote is actually from St. Augustine.
Uh-huh.
So it's older. The quote is older than Laing. It refers to you can't love in general. William Blake said that you have to love the other in minute particulars. Anybody who tries to love in generalities is a scoundrel, a blackguard, and a hypocrite. So I think it refers to that. Now, as far as learning to love, what Laing also said is a lot of people make excuses that, I have never been loved, so I can't love. He says that's poppycock. Love is in every human heart, and it's up to you and me to manifest it. You can't control who is loving you, but you're in absolute control of who you love or whether you love or not. It's a decision. Love without will is sheer sentimentality. Will without love is sheer cruelty. Now, where psychedelics or entheogens come into this is that usually, if I am having difficulty in opening my heart, it's because I have been hurt. And I developed a million habits in order to survive. Now, these habits may have protected me and protected my heart. That's why I'm here. But if war is over and I can't come out of the bunker I have dug myself into, I'm in deep trouble. And if I learn not to trust people, because behind every face there could be somebody who is like the one who hurt me, then I need something very convincing and encouraging to risk everything. Many healers have said that at the very bottom, the foundation of healing is putting yourself into a situation where you know that the healer could actually kill you, and he won't. Because if you are defended and you know that even if the healer tried to kill you, you'd be there and defend yourself, nothing is going to happen. So the first time you know someone loves you is when you're so vulnerable that the other can kill you, and they won't. So just let me refer to one LSD experience where, or actually 5-MeO-DMT, which is the businessman's LSD, because it's over in 10 minutes, if you like. Basically, the experience on 5-MeO-DMT is that you die, that you have a momentary sensation that you've been poisoned, it's too much, this is it. You say goodbye to everyone that you've known, you say goodbye to your life, and you die. And everything stops, everything ceases, it's over. And then when miraculously, after crucifixion, you get resurrected, you realize that when you start living again, number one, you realize that you don't know what happened between the time you died and the time you have been resuscitated or resurrected, because you weren't there. So it's forever a mystery. That's the Eleusinian mystery. You can't talk about it not because it's a secret, but because you weren't there. But when you find yourself trickling back into life, hello?
Here.
When you trickle back into life, you realize that you didn't come back because of your own effort.
They're having some technical issues here, but it's still working.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So the surprise is that what one learns from an experience like this is that I'm not alive by my own efforts. I'm alive in spite of my own efforts. Something lives me. Like Kierkegaard on his deathbed, just before he died, he sat up, looked around, and said, "My God, I've been loved all my life. I just didn't realize it." Mm-hmm. And then he died. Mm-hmm. So experiences with entheogens make you believe that there is nothing to fear, that you might as well open your heart, that thy will be done, not mine. So many entheogens allow you to give up old habits and start fresh. Mm-hmm. What could be better than that?
And do you feel that it's, like, how does a person know that it's actually the path for them? Because certainly the experience you describe, in my words, I'd say that state of no separation, oneness, love, that being your essence. I mean, that's my language for it. That can also be achieved without the use of entheogens, yes?
Sure.
Yeah. And so how would a person know that they're called to one path over another? What's the sense that you have, having worked with people, of what calls them to work this way?
No idea. But I do know people often ask me how should a future psychedelic therapist select his or her patients when are psychedelics contraindicated? Mm-hmm. And I would simply say self-selection. There is some deep wisdom. There are people who absolutely wouldn't touch the stuff, and that's the best for them. I would never advocate the use of psychedelic to anyone. I think that those who are breaking down the door, insisting on having it, whether it's legal or not, they are the ones for whom it works.
Mm-hmm.
And what, in your opinion, is the value or benefit of following certain traditions, ceremonial practices versus having distilled chemical that is, included in a pill and served over the counter?
No difference whatsoever. Again, I think it's a question of transference. It's a question of one's own particular history. It's a question of belief systems. It's a question of prejudice. But when it comes right down to it, and in my talk in the conference, what I certainly would like to address is that anyone who would tell me how to do it and what to do, I wouldn't trust. Mm-hmm. Because it's a one-upmanship game, it's a power game. Nobody is to program my music for me. Nobody is to tell me what ceremony or what to participate in. I am 100% for allowing people to have their experience, both with entheogens and without entheogens. I think that psychotherapy healing is a feminine enterprise, and masculine energy has no place in it.
I just want to touch on that because I was thinking about that as well. And you're talking about qualities of receptivity and how else would you describe that feminine approach?
Surrender to something bigger than you are. Thy will be done, not mine. Right. Men are a little bit too competitive for that, and they mistake surrender to something bigger than all of us to giving in to another human being. And like Laing said, he hoped that never, ever in his life would he surrender or give in to another human being. But he also hoped that he would always surrender to a situation. And by situation, he meant something bigger than all of us. Our situation is what needs to move us, not somebody who claims to know.
Mm-hmm. I wanted, if you don't mind, to pursue, this is Stephen again, this question that Andrew had asked about the substances themselves. Understood your point, and I know that you're going to elaborate on it at the conference. The question I have is, it's often said by the people from the indigenous traditions that the pure plants themselves, or plant mixtures, as in the case of ayahuasca, have within them the ability to release or access spirits which can be of benefit. In fact, I've been told by shamans in Peru that the Icaros, the songs themselves, are in fact spirits that sometimes come to the ceremony and say, sing me now, I'm just the right one for this situation. So, it's difficult to envision something like MDMA or LSD or some other laboratory synthesized psychoactive alkaloids having a spirit in that sense. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. There are many stories, and stories are wonderful, and the best story is the most healing story. But we can't mix up what works with what is the truth. I think that set and setting is extremely important, whether it's plants or synthetic materials. And, for example, the man I have tried ayahuasca with, he would say that Icaros are his way of seducing the grandmother to come, because the grandmother doesn't just hang around anywhere. So he has to sing beautifully and interest the grandmother. It's a call to the grandmother. So I'm sure that there are dozens of stories about spirits and Icaros, and some of them may actually be true. I'm not... my skepticism is not cynicism. Mm-hmm. I simply say there is no one on this earth who knows about what happens after we die. And that's it. I think one could say that synthetic, like LSD, for example, I always thought of it, it goes in, it throws a bunch of switches, and disappears. And it takes a certain amount of time for the switches to set back to default. And so it's fairly mechanical. What was under awareness you become aware of. What you were aware of goes below awareness. You are in an altered state of consciousness, and if all goes well, the switches flip back into where they used to be, and you go on as if nothing happened. Whereas with plant medicines, the experience seems to be far more personal. It does seem like other intelligences communicate with you. On the other hand, I have experienced and I have known people experience meeting with intelligences, even if they were due to thrown switches, because it somehow, as Huxley coined the phrase, opened the doors of perception. So who knows what comes through those doors once they are open, whether mechanically or by plant spirit.
Right.
By the way, under the influence of LSD, it certainly seems like each tree, each plant has a wisdom and has things to communicate, and they are very good listeners. But what I am sure of, I can tell you, is my experience. What my experience means, I am never sure of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you follow the thinking around allies? Do you use that word when you think of different either plant medicines or LSD?
Sure. Often it's a good metaphor, but I just use it as metaphor. Even without the use of any entheogens, in therapy, it's very important that I find at least some energy in my patient who can be my ally. Otherwise, in difficult moments, we lose each other. Mm-hmm. But if I have an ally, then connection is assured.
Mm-hmm. And the studies you've been involved with, if we could just bring in a little bit of any clinical studies or research that you have found particularly fascinating, that you might want to share with our listeners.
I think the original studies, which have been forgotten, that's before 1967, when many of these drugs were legal. Those studies were fascinating and genuinely exciting because we really didn't know for sure what we had. But the studies which are now, for example, the MDMA studies that are now, there is one conducted here in Vancouver, several have finished already in the United States and Europe, that show that psychotherapy using MDMA as an adjunct, especially with people who suffer from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, that therapy is more effective and shorter with the use of MDMA than without.
And what do you attribute that to?
Well, I'll tell you in a moment, but what I wanted to say, these studies for me are not in the least exciting, because to me these are political maneuvers, not scientific discoveries. We know, anybody who's been around for the last 44 years, like I have, knows that MDMA shortens therapy with traumatized people. And so we are doing this in order to convince governments to make these drugs legal, at least to qualified practitioners, to get them off the restricted list. But we know what the results will be, so they are not exciting. They are really a bureaucratic and political necessity. Mm-hmm. Now, why I think MDMA particularly is effective is because, look, any one of us who have had the experience knows that there are at least three things that happen when you take MDMA. It presents you. Suddenly you're in the present. You don't care about the future or the past. It gets rid of all shame. And so for the first time, for some people, they know what it's like to be alive without shame. And they didn't even know how ashamed they were because, ask a fish about water, fish about water. If you've been swimming in shame, you don't even know until suddenly you take a pill and you don't feel shame. And the third thing is that it opens your heart. And you don't know how closed your heart is until it opens more than it happens to be at the moment. So there are three surprises, and what happens, why therapy takes long, is because you can't get to remembering and grieving what happened until the person who you are working with has some modicum of safety, security, and trust in the therapist. And that can take, with some people, a couple of hours. With some people, it takes years. Whereas MDMA suddenly clears the decks, and the person who has taken it looks at the therapist, and suddenly the person feels safe, secure, and suddenly can remember and start grieving in the company of the therapist, whereas without the drug it may have taken 4 years for the person to get to that stage.
I understand that it also has this capability that it leaves your sort of articulate brain quite clear and your memory so that you can talk about what's going on and remember.
Yeah, because it presents you, you can go to the traumatic experience, touch on it, but not lose your connection with the present. Because a lot of therapy, you go back into the traumatic experience and you get re-traumatized because you lose touch with the here and now. But MDMA allows you to have one foot in the here and now where you're safe, and with the other, you step into the horror of what scared you in the first place.
Can you give us a little teaser about what you might talk about at the pre-conference event next Wednesday?
Oh, it's always the same thing. But there mostly I'm hoping to have conversation because I have found more and more as I get older that when people ask me questions, I suddenly say things I didn't know I knew.
It's all about the relationship, I guess.
So you're going to open it up to questions fairly early
soon.
into it.
Yeah, I'll make some outrageous remarks if I can, and then the rest will take care of itself, I hope.
Great, yeah.
And at the conference, do you have a particular focus? That's on, again, the 24th, 25th, 26th, the Spirit Plant Conference.
I think what is important is I want to really question any kind of masculine approach to this, and I think, unfortunately, it gives vehicle for a kind of one-upmanship and control and a kind of sadomasochistic engagement, which is disguised as guidance and leadership. So I certainly want to put a question mark to all that.
You're talking about the approach in this particular field.
Yeah. By indigenous people as well as the ones who, after a couple of ayahuasca sessions, think that they are experts.
Well, those are the scary ones.
Why do I get the feeling that you're always a bit on the radical side, Andrew? It's just a feeling.
What's your feeling?
And that you're always a bit on that edge. It's like the one who will, I use the word radical, but the one who's going to poke wherever it needs to be poked.
Well, I hope so. Radical, by the way, is accurate. I think I would call myself radical, but in the sense of radix means roots. And I want to go back to the roots. Right. And I don't think there is any progress in psychotherapy. 2,000 years ago, the same problems presented themselves. There is progress in technology, but not in therapy.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? I know the guest we had last week,
Dennis McKenna.
Dennis McKenna talked about the fusion or possible future fusion of psychotherapy and shamanism. Do you have a comment on that or a thought about that?
Sure. I think it always has been. I mean, that's nothing new. It's just one could talk about it some more. It always depends. Right now, in our culture, it's a left-brained culture. And in a left-brained culture, right-brained people are degraded and sometimes persecuted. So right-brain people have to be very careful not to fall prey to the dominance of left-brain people. So a lot of this has been going on underground.
And it's changing?
Well, I think it's coming a little bit above ground, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I think it's like a pendulum. Sometimes there is a loosening, but then when you least expect it, there's a tightening. And actually, we had amnesia for 20 years. It's like LSD never happened.
Right.
Like the mind boggles how collectively we have these kind of amnesias.
So you don't hold strongly to the vision that or the concept that the planet is in such a mess right now that there's a possible kind of widespread consciousness transformation that might be at least in part precipitated by the use of some of these substances in the right set and setting?
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. I'm prepared for the best, but I'm not sure. I can't claim to know that.
No, of course.
Well, we have loved having you on the show. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners before we say goodbye?
Well, what I would say is just as a warning, because I think it's very heady and exciting to talk about these things. Is always be very careful of the company you do it in. Not only normally, I am through you, so I. But when you are under the influence of a powerful psychedelic, who you are with can make or break your experience.
Right.
So
thank you for that.
Be careful.
Yeah,
thank you
super
very much.
important. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you at your pre-conference, which is, again, October 15th, 8 to 10 p.m. at Eternal Abundance on the Drive, Commercial Drive, and the Spirit Plant Conference at UBC, October 24th, 25th, and 26th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
We've been speaking with Andrew Feldmar, and one of our speakers at this upcoming conference will be back in just a moment. You're listening to Conscious Living Radio, 100.5 FM.
Inside of breath,